Hi everyone, and welcome to our Bible study series. Today it's a very blustery, cold, and rainy day where I am. It's a good day to be inside doing Bible studies, and today we're going to do 2 Samuel chapter 21. Got to be honest, this is a chapter that leaves me with some questions, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in our outline section. But as most of you know, the PDF that you're seeing is available on our website for free download, and there are physical books on Amazon that you can now buy. There's a link down in the description to those as well. Let's talk about time frame. These events happened within the reign of David, who we're going to talk about. That would have been approximately 1055 BC to 1015 BC. David reigned for about 40 years. Who are we going to be talking about? The Gibeonites were originally from the land of Canaan, around that area, the Promised Land. And they had tricked the Israelites into making a peace treaty with them when Joshua led the Israelites into the land to conquer the land. If you want to know more about that, look up our Bible study on Joshua chapter 9, or you can just read the text for yourself. We're going to talk about 7 sons or 7 relatives of King Saul. These relatives were killed to atone for Saul's crimes against the Gibeonite people. And then Mephibosheth is our last main character. He was Jonathan's son, and David had made a promise to Jonathan that he would care for Mephibosheth, or that he would care for all of Jonathan's family. So that will become relevant in our outline section as well. Scroll up a little bit to our map. Where are we going to be located? Gibeah is the central location for chapter 21. Now, we're also going to talk about Gath and Gob a little bit at the end of the chapter. Those were Philistine cities. Now, let's talk about what played out in chapter 21, and I'll explain why I have some questions about this chapter, why it leaves me scratching my head a little bit. Section number 1, verses 1 through 14, the blood guilt of the Gibeonites on Saul's house. There was a 3-year famine in Israel, and God revealed to David that this 3-year famine was the result of blood guilt, outstanding blood guilt that was on the house of Saul, even though Saul was dead at this point. You see, hundreds of years before David ever became king, or before he was even born, Joshua had made a peace treaty with the Gibeonites. Saul, though, possibly with the help of his sons and his relatives, broke that treaty and attacked the people of Gibeon. David went to the Gibeonites and he wanted to discover, okay, how can we atone for this? How can we resolve it and make it right to you, since our king, our last king, attacked your people and breached the peace treaty? And the solution that the Gibeonites came up with was interesting. They asked David to give them 7 of Saul's sons so that they could, quote, hang them before the Lord. So they're going to kill them. David thought this was acceptable, and so he granted their request. But he made sure to save Mephibosheth because of the oath that he had made with Jonathan to care for his family. The 7 men included 2 of Saul's sons and 5 of Saul's grandsons. And they were taken and they were killed on the first day of the barley harvest and hanged on the mountain at Gibeah. We're told that after they were hanged, Rizpah, who was the mother of Saul's 2 sons, stayed by the bodies to keep wild animals from getting on them or from eating them or dragging them away. When David learned of her devotion to her sons, he ordered that the bodies were to be taken down, the bones of Saul and Jonathan and the other sons were to be buried. And we're told that God acknowledged David's attempt to atone for the crimes of Saul, and he, quote, responded to the plea for the land. So if you're anything like me, you're probably left with some questions about, well, wait a second, how is it fair that Saul's sons, his grandsons, had to pay the price for what he did? And we don't have all the details, and that's kind of what makes it tricky. It is possible that they participated in this crime against the Gibeonites, but it's also possible that they didn't. So how is that fair? Well, I don't know exactly because I don't have all of the information, but I know that God at least acknowledged David's attempt to make this right. And so I'll let God figure that situation out. I'm content to say that I don't know everything that was going on, and so leave that in the hands of God. Now, as you may be able to tell from the video, I'm losing all the light. The storm clouds have just rolled in. It got really dark in this room, so we better finish up pretty quickly. Section number 2, David's wars with the Philistines. This just records some of the encounters that David and his men had with the Philistines, who were their longtime enemies. During a battle with the Philistines, David, quote, grew weary Evidently, he was just getting old at this point. And there was a Philistine named Ishbi-Benob, who was a descendant of the giants, who was out to get David. And it looks like Abishai, who was Joab's brother, one of David's mighty men, he had to come to David's aid, and he ended up being the one who killed Ishbi-Benob to save David. And after this battle, David's men forbid him from fighting with the army anymore. All the great warriors get old eventually, right? And we'll talk about that in our application section. But the rest of the chapter then describes 3 other Philistine warriors of great stature. They were descendants of the giants, kind of like Goliath, who were struck down by David's mighty men, including one with 12 fingers and 12 toes. So he had 6 fingers on each hand, I guess. And in lieu of our application section, we have trivia. What famous movie features a man with 6 fingers on his hand? Go. Leave it in the comments section. That probably won't take too long to solve. But anyway, no, we will do an application section. And here it is. Every great warrior will eventually have to leave the battlefield. Even David, who was renowned for killing his tens of thousands, right? People sang about his military victories in Israel. Even the great warrior David eventually grew too old for active combat. Those who lead churches need to take an application from this. Those who lead churches need to be cognizant that there will come a day when they will need to withdraw from the battlefield, when they'll be too old to lead as they once did, right? And part of good leadership is recognition of your imminent meeting with old age and proactively preparing leaders so that the next generation will be strong. I was just talking to my dad this past week about, especially in the mission field, one of the biggest needs is there'd be missionaries who go into these locations, but then those missionaries get old and they have to leave, and there's always like a gap. Unless the missionary is very intentional about raising up leaders behind them, the church is often left kind of with nobody to take the reins at that point. So being a great leader means developing those who are going to follow behind you so that the thing that you work so hard to build, that you've been fighting for, doesn't collapse after you're gone. So that's the application. Hope you enjoyed this study. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow for 2 Samuel 22.